It's working. Howard Heights City Council work session. The first item on our agenda will be a review of our business meeting this evening. So I have asked our IT manager, Matt Irvin, if he'd lead us in the pledge tonight. He gratefully said yes. We have a citizen comment period scheduled right after that. And then we will move to a public hearing on our proposed budget for 2022, 2023. So that is actually an item under our staff report. So we'll come back to that in just a couple minutes, but and discuss it later. Our legislative actions tonight are small. And we actually only have one, which is 5.1, consideration of Resolution 2022-30, consenting to appointments to the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. And I'm actually going to have Tim talk about that a little bit and give us some background right now.
Yeah, we put in the information in your packet on each of these individuals. They have both been serving since the beginning of the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. They've contributed well, all three of them, Aaron and Matthew and Melissa. And I feel really good about reappointing them and letting them serve a second term. So that's what I'm recommending tonight.
What are their names? Did you say you have?
Yeah, it's Aaron Davis, Matthew Domenici, and Melissa Fields.
Okay.
Great. You got Rona in there too. Is that not the case?
Oh, and excuse me, and Rona Cohen.
Rona, can't
Phil's
forget
Cohen.
Rona.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rona.
don't do that.
So all four.
Melissa, is she the wife of Dave?
Mhm. She is.
Okay, the general manager at
Yeah.
No,
it's not the one?
Rona is.
Not Rona.
No, Melissa.
Oh, okay.
Melissa Fields.
Melissa's still been a big part of it for
Yeah.
a long
Stan will be a little upset with you.
No. Okay, any comments, questions from the council on these appointments? So, and then the last item for this evening will be approval of our consent calendar, which is the minutes for May 17th for our work session and business meeting. So our next item on our work session agenda today is we have invited Miss Colleen Potter. And hopefully I said that right. Colleen is here to present to us about this past election cycle's ranked choice voting that occurred with many municipalities, including our own. So we will invite Colleen to come up to the table.
It's gotta be there.
You guys have.
All the table mics are off, Matt. I tried turning up my capital on that. Are they start going now?
Yeah.
These are all. Okay.
Well, welcome, Colleen. We're grateful to have you here and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much. I can share my screen, right?
Yes.
First of all, I'm so sorry. I have been to a lot of cities and it's amazing how many different ways you can figure out Zoom meetings in this world. I was the mayor of Heber most recently and we had a whole different system than you guys have. And I just got a new computer. So how in the world do I get to my someone? Okay, I'm just trying to get to the desktop. Here we go. I just got it. What? Help me.
Yes.
What in the world? He's great, isn't he? He's so great. He was my neighbor. You guys, do you want me to here? Let me just listen. I'm sorry. I've done this 17 times. I can't hold this CDF.
Yeah.
You want to just pull the PDF?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so briefly, while she's pulling my PDF, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm with Utah Ranked Choice Voting. I was the director of elections for the state of Utah years ago, and most recently the mayor of Heber City. So I was asked to help the cities like yours who implemented ranked choice voting as part of the legislative pilot project. What I'm here for today is not to, I know as council and staff, you have to analyze these issues so carefully and there's so many variables. I'm just here to share with you one piece of information, and that is a survey that was done through Y2 Analytics, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with them. They're sort of the gold standard of survey research in Utah, where they everything is done very scientifically, very professionally. They were able to talk to people on the phone for these surveys. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. You can jump to the next slide. And what we wanted to do is make sure, I know it's always tricky to figure out how citizens feel about issues because you only hear from a few citizens. So what we did is have this survey so that we could come and share with you the opinions, just the opinions of the voters who participated in this. There's also there were almost 2,000 voters that were surveyed, about almost 1,400 that lived in cities who did vote a ranked choice voting ballot, and then about 500 in cities that didn't. So the purpose of this, again, was just to bring to the cities data that was scientifically significant and done in a professional way, surveying the residents of your city. So what they did is, and for those who are statistics experts or nerds that want me to send you, I can send you another slide deck and information about the whole survey that goes into in depth on how Y2 did it, with contact information if you want to reach out to them. But what they did is they created a model including, who would likely, what would the composition of voters look like who would vote in this 2021 election, age, party registration, whether they're active or inactive, how long they've been registered, and if they voted in the past. And then they weighted those based on, all the statistical ways that they create a sample. And in the end, the margin of error was plus or minus 2.6%, which again is the gold standard in survey research. So you can move forward. So I've sat enough hours of my life in meetings, so I'm going to make this brief and just share with you some of this, some of the questions and the numbers that came from those. And then again, I sent you this PowerPoint. I'm happy to send you any further information or answer any questions that you might have. So the first question was just how easy or difficult did you find it? A lot of people who didn't want to do the pilot or who were opposed said it's too confusing, it's too hard. People don't know how to rank. And we found in Utah, as well as throughout the nation, 81% of the people said at least it was somewhat easy to use. I think from the time we're children, we know that we can rank, do I want macaroni and cheese or a hot dog, or what's your choices here? So most people find that it's pretty easy to use. Okay, next slide. How clear were the instructions you received about how to fill out your ballot? 90% said at least they were somewhat clear. And goes without saying that. How much, and here's an interesting one, how much did you like or dislike using a ranked choice ballot? Overall, statewide, it was 62% that said they at least liked it somewhat. But interestingly, we found a variation among different cities. So in Salt Lake City, they were the highest. They were 29 percentage points higher and more likely to say they liked it than Sandy residents. 80% in Salt Lake, 51% in Sandy. When I was presenting to the council on Sandy, we had a conversation about what might have happened. Sandy was unique in that there were candidates who particularly ran to try and stop ranked choice voting or because they were opposed to it. At the end, when there was an analysis, there were about 4,000 ballots that were not exhausted. So 4,000 people did not have a say in the final decision between the final candidates. Clearly, that could have influenced the outcome. But it was an interesting dynamic that happened in Sandy. But generally, all the other cities had over 50% that said they actually liked voting with the ranked choice.
Sandy that was about 4,000 vote ballots that did become exhausted.
Correct.
Because for whatever reason, at the voter's discretion, they didn't rank everybody all the way through. They
All the
only
way,
chose,
yeah.
they didn't choose
Yeah.
either Monica or Jim.
Right. And anecdotally, there were candidates who told people, don't vote for other people, just vote for me.
Mhm.
And I know, having been a candidate in our traditional election system, that can sometimes help you. And so people will say, we're just going to vote for you and not give anyone any help. But in this case, it didn't help them. It basically disenfranchised those voters who could have had a say in that last, matchup between those two, but they didn't choose to. Okay.
May I just ask a
Yeah.
question, because I did notice that the instructions coming out of, I believe, Salt Lake County They did say to rank. I mean, they didn't say you have a choice to vote for one or as many as you'd like. They all said you need to rank. So that's interesting to me, that as many as 4,000 voters in Sandy chose
Yeah.
only one
Yeah.
candidate. So
That's not what that means. That means 4,000 at some point didn't rank all 7 or 8.
Right, but
They
the
might
exact
have
They-
ones
there are
too.
two. They just didn't have Monica or Jim in anyone that they ranked.
Well,
Makes sense.
so out of the final two, so to say not exhausted means that the final two were not,
Those
voted on
4,000
those
people,
ballots.
for whatever reason, didn't vote for either of those candidates, but they may have voted for 5 others.
But they clearly didn't vote for all 7. They didn't rank
Right.
all of the candidates.
Otherwise, their
Right.
ballots would not have been exhausted.
did it seem, was there any way to understand then if those people had any kind of ill feelings toward ranked choice voting based on how that, outcome came to be, or, I mean, was that at all?
Well, we couldn't
Analyzed.
really tie it to their votes just because you
Yeah.
don't know, but you
Right.
could just look at these numbers and there are some more numbers I don't have in here. I'm happy to send you the whole survey. But really based on just the people who were in Sandy and their involvement, there were candidates saying, don't vote for anyone else. And I think that's really what happened because a lot of people, they had in the survey, they did their own survey. And people were able to just give open-ended answers to questions. And there were pages and pages of comments. And some of them were like, I don't like ranked choice voting because I want to know the people's political party. Like things that have nothing to do with it, but they just don't understand how municipal elections work. So I think there were probably people who maybe weren't educated and a candidate said, just vote for me. And they just listened to them. It's probably really what happened at the end of the day, because it was such an anomaly what happened in Sandy versus the other cities.
What I found, and I got calls all night of the voting,
Mhm.
and it was people that vote every time. They said, there's so many people, there's a lot of people on these, I can't research them all. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
When you have that many people. And
Right.
then they said, do I vote for one? Do I have to vote for all of them? There was a lot of questions that I don't see on any of these surveys. Because it's, when you ask somebody, is it difficult? Nobody wants to say, I can't understand.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of dynamic there that
Yeah.
is an unknown, but it was very concerning to those people that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
spoke to.
It is definitely expects more of a voter to say, I like this person and I hate everybody else, or to say, I like this person, but they're pretty good on environmental issues. And they have to really look a little deeper and figure it out, which is, I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword because.
Due
the notion-
diligence is really tough. You
It
know what I
is
mean?
hard. People don't
When
want
you're
to take.
busy
the
with
time.
your
I
lives,
know.
you're really
I know.
busy, and they'll say, tell me about this person. Most of the time, they'll ask somebody that's already vetted that out.
Yeah,
And it's sad, but we only have 40% vote in our city,
Yeah.
pretty much.
do you have 40 on this last election?
Well, we
Huh.
typically have had that.
Yeah, we've had lower, but I think Heber had about 60 this time for some reason.
It's kind of sad that only 40, and even out of those
Yeah.
40, there was a lot of question on
Yeah.
how to, and you get busy with life, it's tough to research out, because it's like the judges and all those people, you have a
no
red
idea.
flag, that person do something that really stood out, if not, just sign it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Put them in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. And I know a lot of the things that advocates would say is we have this divided system where people aren't participating and they're not trusting our government. And if we can make it less that way, because it's not just all or nothing, maybe that can help. But yeah, we have to weigh out every aspect. And I know that's a tricky thing as a council member to decide, where you want to land.
I was gonna wait till the end, but I will tag this in now. So, one issue with answering a question like Ellen just asked, just Councilmember Burrell, is, apparently Utah County was able to release, when I looked at elections that are run by the same people running the same systems in the past, for example, that Santa Fe, they actually released generic photos of every single ballot that was cast. You could go through and find out how deep people went.
Uh-huh.
And nationwide, usually a minimum of 60%, as high as 85% of all the people who end up with the first or second are in the top 3 of those people who cast votes.
Uh-huh.
We've not been able to do that type of analysis with Salt Lake County. Are you nodding because you know the issue I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
I'm just curious, you said you had been with Heber. Was Heber able to get those results or
No,
did they ask?
you know, it's really interesting because
I would just like to see, so we can answer some of those questions,
Yeah.
how confusing it is. If you see 25% of the ballots, it's only one, then there was some confusion.
yeah,
But if you see that, the vast majority of people, the 2, 3, 4 people, then
Yeah.
that
yeah.
kind of.
So there's what's called a cast vote record. And in Utah law, it talks about not releasing official election material, certain things besides, the results. Well, Utah County interpreted this as we could scrub some of this information and release it. Salt Lake County interpreted it as we can't release it because we did try to ask for it because we had people crunching that data, so they were able to see these very things. And so we could have looked a little deeper at those 4,000 ballots in Sandy, but Salt Lake County interpreted that law differently than Utah County. And that's where we were on recounts. Like there were a couple of things that came up during this election where we saw different counties interpreting it differently, and the state didn't really come down until after the process, and they actually backed up Salt Lake County. And so Utah County had released it to some people to analyze, but they said, Salt Lake County, we agree with them, and they just
So you said, so legislature took a spin at it and decided to.
well, they didn't on that issue. I do think maybe in the future it will come up. I'm going to talk to you at the end about a cleanup bill and some of the things that they did do, but it's a great question because it would be helpful to be able to look a little deeper and say what happened here without knowing any individual ballots, of course, but just saying what's happening. Are people really confused and not getting their full?
I didn't find out a single Santa Fe voter's identity.
Exactly. It's a great point. You don't know how everyone's Saturday voting. That's a great point. One of the other conversations around ranked choice voting is sometimes there's a candidate that you really like, but you think, oh my gosh, everyone says these two people are in the lead. Do I dare to vote for this person? Am I wasting my vote? So the question here is along those lines. Some voters claim that they vote for someone who's not their favorite because their favorite candidate has little or no chance of winning and their vote will be wasted. Were you more or less likely to vote for your favorite candidate in this election? And that was just to RCV voters. 60% said they were more likely to vote for someone they really wanted to, knowing that if that person didn't get in the final, they still had their vote among two on their second and third choice. Overall, how satisfied were you with your voting experience at this year's municipal election? Very comparable with the non-ranked choice and the ranked choice. We were, in the 80s with both of those. Which statement comes closest to your opinion for the best method to select your city council members and mayor? Those who did vote RCV had a 13% higher, 15% higher chance of thinking, or 13% higher, 12% higher of wanting to use ranked choice voting. And then some said they didn't care. And then some people just said, we just want to get the most votes. We don't care if it's a majority. How important is it to you that a candidate wins the majority of the votes? And I guess that's probably one of the big questions of whether we would need to change anything. A lot of the states do runoff elections because they do feel strongly about people having a majority. We all know runoff elections are expensive and you have a smaller turnout. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to add those. So in this survey, 85% total said, yeah, I think it is important they have a majority of votes of the voters. And it begs that question of, do people have confidence in their elected officials? Do they feel like, the majority of people here really want that person making decisions? Or did we have 10 people on the ballot or 6 people on the ballot and someone won with 20%? So that's what this question was getting at. And this goes at the question of should this be moved up to, partisan elections, which comes closest to your opinion for how Utah's elected officials should be chosen. In the dark blue should be used for more Utah elections, including statewide offices. There are people who looked at the governor's race and said, yeah, Governor Cox, he had 30-something%. Some people think that he may not have won under a ranked choice voting system, and that could be a pro or con depending on, whether you supported him. But of the people who used RCV, 50% think it should be expanded. 19% only for municipal or other local, and 31% on the other side. So next one. So in House Bill 264, that's where they addressed some of the technical changes that came up. Like there was a disparity between the recount in Sandy, Moab had a recount, and it was a question of what triggers that recount and when does it occur? And if we had a recount, can we postpone the canvas? So there were some technical things that all came into this bill. That bill was passed. For all intents and purposes, the legislature is still supporting the pilot project. But of course, you know that, again, you would have to make a determination to opt in the next municipal election. It's not automatic, and you have the advice of your good recorder to talk to you about those election laws. So I'm happy to answer any questions or send you more information.
Was there any, Colleen, thought process about using ranked choice voting in a primary and then to narrowing it to 2 and still having a final election? Does that make sense?
Yes, in municipal elections. Yes, and that was one of Provo City didn't like the idea of giving up a primary. I know there are a lot of cities who say, yeah, you're either going to have a lot of people on your primary or general, but they felt that same way. They said, we're a bigger city, we have a lot of candidates. We would like to retain the ability to have a primary election, but use ranked choice voting and then narrow that down. And that is in the legislation. So as a city, you could choose to do it that way if you want to. Mhm.
I think that, as a candidate who ran under ranked choice voting, my looking back was I didn't love not, there were 5 people in my race,
Mhm.
and not knowing, I was told by everybody that this is the person that I needed to beat. In reality, it was a different person that I needed to beat.
Right. So how do you
And so the
strategize?
contrast, how to contrast between that person was it was difficult for me, but it's interesting. So we could, if we wanted, use ranked choice voting for a primary
Yeah, you
to
could.
narrow it to 2.
You definitely could do that. if
Interesting.
That's what you choose.
But you did say that the council will need to vote in advance of what we want. I was under the impression that we only would vote if we wanted to change, but we have to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when the legislature passed this bill, they designed it so it was a deliberate action that you would take. Each year you'd have to say, by this date, you notify the lieutenant governor that for this upcoming election, you're going to use it if you choose to opt
Will
in.
that be in the spring of the election year or? what?
It's like, gosh, what was the
Was
date?
March,
May
I
1st.
think.
It was before May 1st of the election year that you would have to notify the lieutenant governor if you choose to opt into the ranked choice voting election. And at that point, you could also notify the lieutenant governor that you chose to just keep your primary and do it in a primary.
Is the reason Sandy is probably not going to do ranked choice due to the confusion on this last try?
My observation is just there were a lot of people that really didn't like it, and particularly those candidates. So it created a whole different environment than in other cities. Because there was confusion, there was misinformation. It was misinformation.
And there were a lot of people that were pushing misinformation, a lot of fear
Yeah, and that was
and stuff that was
Yeah, so that-
unfortunate to the.
And it was stuff that wasn't even really ranked choice voting. It was
Mm-hmm.
tying all these other things to it. And so my guess is from being there for just one meeting, they probably won't do it again. But most of them weren't saying a whole lot about it. so.
Hmm.
But they did do their own survey, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to show the data they had was really different than this data. But when you took out all of the people who didn't live in the city and you took out, it was the same. And so a lot of times I know in Hebrew, we put something out. What do you think about this? You don't have any idea if people are voting multiple times or, unless you have some kind of a system that,
So there wasn't a Y2 type.
no,
So it
No,
was
they
just
just
like
did
a
their own.
monkey,
Yeah.
the
yeah, Yeah.
survey monkey.
right,
sorry.
exactly. But when someone really
No
broke it
offense to
down.
the Sandy City Council, I'm
Yeah.
there about being monkeys. That's not what I meant.
No, no. But when you broke it all down and took out the people, it was really the same data pretty much as what we had found with Y2. So it was actually, as long as you make sure you have good data, then you have good results, or you have good, you're making sure you're getting the right people, then you can get the right information. But that's tricky when you're sitting, you don't want to spend a ton of money on hiring Y2 for your surveys. So.
Well, Colleen, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. We
Thanks for the
appreciate you coming and yeah. So I should have let the council know before you started. So we invited Colleen to come and speak to us kind of as an advocate for ranked choice voting. We also wanted to invite Christy Bulkley, who would like to come and talk about some of the.
I should make one comment. Colleen, your current position is,
With ranked choice voting,
or just,
oh, I'm actually working full-time with Encircle.
okay, so, okay, you're not currently in the lieutenant governor's office?
No, not
Okay,
right now.
all right.
So we wanted to hear the other side, you know, and then I wanted to let the council know as well, we are going to schedule some time to discuss this. At that time, we don't have enough time on our agenda today, but with either the next meeting, we might push it off another meeting because of some people being out of town. We will schedule 15-20 minutes to actually discuss it as a council and determine if we want to go forward or go back to the primary system. So having said that, we're grateful for Christy Bulkley now to present to us and give us your side of ranked choice
Okay,
voting.
and then let me see if I can.
Christy, are you registered under Anshaw?
Yes.
Okay.
That
No,
would be-
no,
You're fine, you're fine. Do I need to click on join as a panelist?
Yeah, he's gonna move you to panel,
Okay, awesome.
and then you can join.
Are we up? And can I control the,
Just go back to your screen here and hit share my screen. You make that so it makes it full screen. Undo
Oh,
that. So now you can share screen. Oh. And then oh,
there we go, we're up.
I think can't. If you want to see the whole thing, that little small thing.
I can get rid of that.
That'll go with that.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Christy Goldley, and I am with an organization called Utah Election Integrity. I do not get paid. I would be interested to know, Stan Lockhart used to be with Fair Vote. I don't know, are you with Fair Vote? Kelly? No, I'm just with Utah Ranked Choice Voting, okay, which is the Utah organization that works really closely with Fair Vote. So I'll tell you a little bit how I got started and how I've been doing this for about 2 years. I got a call one night from somebody that I knew loosely in the neighborhood that said, hey, what do you think about ranked choice voting? I had worked for a think tank and I said, you know, it always sounded like a good idea to me. And she said, well, come to city council tonight because Stan Lockhart and Josh Daniels are going to be there. And I have asked the mayor if I can present the other side and maybe I can change your mind. So I went as an advocate, thinking that I was going to hear a defense, and by the end, she had changed my mind. And so what we had found out, and it's been a 2-year process, just so you know, so you understand motives, I get paid nothing. When we started Utah Election Integrity, we have one individual who decided to fund a billboard for us. So other than that, we're hoping people can change our minds so we can kind of stop the madness, because I'm a school teacher. I don't do this. I don't get paid. I would love for somebody just to reimburse my gas. So we follow them around, and the only thing that we're doing, and I've been on a city council, is we're just trying to provide information for you guys, because we feel like you guys want what's best for your community. And so our goal is to provide the data and to kind of show a big picture outlook for you. And I spend the legislative session going over these types of bills. And so all for free. So that's kind of how we got started in this. And hopefully, and I realize we only get a little bit of time today, and ranked choice voting is a difficult methodology. All methodologies have their issues. So if you have never looked at methodologies, they all have their issues. Traditional, you can split the vote sometimes. And so that is what this has tried to solve. But it also presents other issues. So hopefully the communication will be both ways, and we're happy to share information with you. We have been able to, Mark Roberts was very kind, and we were able to sit down with him for about 2 hours and debate this out. He was the original pusher of it in the legislature, if you guys aren't aware. And so let's look at this. Is ranked choice voting fair? The concept of political equality from the Declaration of Independence to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address can mean only one thing: one person, one vote. And I'll show you how that does not always end up one person, one vote. Okay, so the question is, like, does it even matter? If you're going to save money eliminating your primary, does it even matter if you don't have a different outcome? So the state of Utah has said that in about 4%, you will have a different outcome with ranked choice voting. But if you look at some other statistics, Maine Policy Institute said that about 17%, up to 17%, you can have a different outcome. So that is, I think, a really interesting point. You also have the point of, and you guys kind of touched on it, the elimination of primaries. And what does that mean for society and your community? How valuable are primaries if you're talking grassroots people? If they need the time to knock doors and get signage. If you don't have a primary, they have to be out of the gate with money, which also allows you kind of the door open to more big money pushers who have candidates that they already know that they want to have there. They can fund them beforehand, get the signage out. So does it disenfranchise grassroots candidates that want to make a difference? You could argue that eliminating a primary does. Okay, so a couple things that we're going to touch on. It centralizes power. I think that's probably the biggest one. It's unfair in multi-seat races like city councils. That's where it's the most unfair, and disenfranchises will show you up to about 25% that's happened in 3 cities already across the board. Hand audits are mostly impossible. What they do is they just run it through another machine. And so you can't really hand audit these if you're going to lay them out. Anybody who knows how the algorithm works, that would be a nightmare, right? You're collapsing votes on each other. Redefines a majority because your majority is only between the last 2. And so it's not what they call a real majority. So the minority disenfranchisement that you guys talked about a little bit is a big deal, and it limits grassroots. Also neuters third-party candidates. So one of the big points that I thought ranked choice voting was so great at was that it provides a path for third parties. But actually what it does is it just removes them off the top for their first vote. And then each third party aligns with another party. So essentially, if you're a libertarian, you usually align with the Republicans. If the Green Party will usually align with the Democrats. So all you do is get rid of any of their bargaining power. It's also promoted by global power brokers and non-monotonicity. So it can actually hurt your first choice candidate. So this is where you will get, I think if anybody followed New York, a lot of their campaigning was, if you don't vote for me but first, vote for me second. And I'll show you how second can actually be the most advantageous position.
What do you mean powered by global power brokers? What are you talking about?
So I'm going to show you who's funding it.
Well, I would like to go back to that when we get to questions, because I disagree with most of what you've got on there. So
Oh, good.
let's go on.
Good. Like I said, our hope is that somebody will prove us wrong so that we can stop. Okay, so order of elimination matters. This is your order of operations. It does change the difference. So your losers are determining your winners, depending on how their ballots are eliminated. That puts different people forward at the end. So I think that inherently can be a problem. This is my biggest issue with ranked choice voting. Is ranked choice voting right now is being used in local municipalities where it actually disenfranchises the most people. But it centralizes vote counting. And so as soon as ranked choice voting, if it keeps going, crosses congressional districts, you have to centrally tabulate it, because you can't just take each city or each county and add them together like they do in traditional voting. You have to do it in a central machine that the state would run. So you'd be running your entire state elections on one machine. Centralization of power is an issue. Just historically speaking, with government, centralization is an issue. So instead of having all
And
these,
before you say, I'm completely against it, I would agree with that. I don't think ranked choice voting is a good idea on partisan elections.
okay,
That's one of the
yes.
reasons.
I appreciate that, because for me, that is probably the biggest threat with ranked choice voting right now, is having them all centralized into one, because there is, especially on TikTok, my own teenagers were just telling me that there is a push right now for a national popular vote, which they rebranding as proportional voting. And so this would be a vehicle to already set up a system to just make the argument for national popular vote. If everybody's already doing ranked choice voting, then we just do it at the state level. So for me, that's actually probably one of the biggest threats. And so this is just Thomas Jefferson, what's destroyed liberty and rights of man in every government that's ever existed under the sun, the generalizing and concentrating all cares and powers into one body. So I was on a city council, like I said, when I worked for the nonprofit, I advocated for local municipalities. And I very much think that is a foundational principle to decentralize power. Okay, so here's one of these examples. Some voters are more equal than other voters. So if you look at Payson, this is Payson from 2019. This is a really good example where we found up to 25% of voters were disenfranchised. So if you look at this total, we've got 2,771 votes. So look at Linda Carter. She's got 691 votes in the first round. Now, this, I believe, has a 3-seat. And so on the first round, you can look, Doug Welton won. I know Doug Welton, he's got 1,047. But Linda Carter's voters are still holding her as their first place voter. So you go to round 2. Linda Carter has picked up some votes because someone was eliminated. So you have 976. But now Brian Hewlett wins. Okay, but Linda Carter's voters have still only voted for one person, her. While other voters, depending on how they ranked them, have now possibly voted for 2. And then on the third round, Linda Carter finally gets in. But her voters didn't know this. And here's the thing, like with my city elections, sometimes I want 2 people equally on different subjects. And I really can't choose between the 2 on how I want to rank them. Because one may be strong in one area and one on the other. That actually happened to me this last time. I thought, man, if we had ranked choice voting, I don't know what I would do on this one. But you won't know that you could end up in this disenfranchisement situation until after the fact. There's no way to know because it's the order of elimination.
Maybe I should have spoken up sooner. I am having trouble with the term disenfranchisement being
Okay.
used in this particular case. An exhaustive ballot is one thing, but a disenfranchisement is actually eliminating the person's chance to vote. It's not dictating how they vote on a ballot.
Or how many
All of
times.
those people had the right to vote. They were not disenfranchised. Their ballot may be exhausted, but the disenfranchisement term has it's a lot more strong.
Okay,
I mean, you could get that, that's what you're getting when you're getting the gerrymandering cases of the Supreme Court, that type of a thing. But to be fair across the board, it's not a disenfranchisement so much as an exhaustive ballot. Those people did vote. They did get there. They weren't turned away because they were whatever.
sure.
The
So
only
maybe, I
reason their
mean,
ballot was exhausted was because, here comes another dirty word. They were not mandated to fill out every single position on their ballot. They had the freedom to choose how many people they did or did not vote for.
so no, not in this case. And sure, language is, I teach English, it's super fluid right now, so we can find a synonym for disenfranchisement.
Yeah,
However, what we're saying is the people who voted for Linda got to vote once when there were 3 seats available. They might consider that some sort of a disadvantage. Had they known the order, they maybe would have changed their order so that they got more than one vote.
I will agree that in a multi-seat race,
Yes, this is when this happens.
which when I finally got down to the details of how those, I was like, okay, that makes sense. All right, I can understand that, but it is, one of the reasons I was less cautious about doing it here, because we have single representative seats. We don't have the multi,
Sure.
I'm not exact, maybe we can talk later. I'm not exactly following what you're saying here, but,
Yeah, this one is a little bit difficult and I can.
it's a complex thing to get through a multi-seat race.
So the people who only got one vote had put Linda as their first choice. And because she took the 3rd seat, their first choice never moved. And so they got her in on the 3rd round. So they got 1 for 3 seats, 1 vote for 3 seats. And so we found this happens in Payson at 24.9%. This happened in Vineyard. This happened in Sandy at 21%. So we know what happens. And it's the process of elimination that makes it happen.
Well, and if I understand the process that was explained to me, your first seat, you run everything normal, just like everything's great. And whoever wins, Fred wins,
Sure.
okay? So for the second round, you just put everything back in the bucket.
Mhm.
You take all of Fred's votes and they become non-existent. They,
Okay, opposite.
you skip over Fred. And so anybody who voted for Fred first, his seconds then become the first votes for the second seat. And then you process
So you take
everything.
the lowest votes and that person's out and you reallocate their second votes.
When you're going for the second seat, you don't fill all 3 seats at once.
Right.
You run 3 different elections.
Right.
Okay, the
Yeah.
first election, Fred wins, okay? And so then you start over, but every vote that is then goes to Fred, that one is ignored, and the next position down,
Mhm.
second for all the people who voted for Fred first, becomes the first place for whoever is gonna win the second seat.
Right.
Okay, so, and in this case, let's say that was Ellen, because okay, so then once Fred and Ellen have got seats 1 and 2,
Mhm.
then you do the whole same thing, but anytime one of those two shows up on the ballot, that position is ignored and it goes to whoever is next.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm,
I mean,
So if your first place vote is never eliminated,
you get one vote.
you get one vote.
So,
Well,
so other people were getting their vote counted towards 3 of the people that got elected, whereas Linda's, they got 1 vote.
And I'll show you, because we're gonna go over your guys' elections.
Go.
And so that's actually what I want to really show you guys, and you'll see how this plays out. It's a little clearer with your elections. So it is interesting to know that 28 out of 29 county clerks oppose ranked choice voting. So I found this interesting when I went to the legislature, that the only one that was for it and advocating for it was Utah County. All the other clerks actively campaign against it and have actually tried to get approval voting because they dislike ranked choice voting so much. And so that's a whole nother story on what approval is and how that works. And like I said, there's a lot of different methodologies, and they all have their issues. There's a whole scientific study on voting methodologies. So you can't audit by hand. Like I said, they have to put them into a machine with multi-seat races. The county clerks, this was interesting to find out, have to export the results from the first seat into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they redistribute the votes. And then they re-import them into the tabulator, run them again, and then have to run the same process. When we found that out, we were not super comfortable with the possibility of human error with exporting into an Excel spreadsheet. So the other thing that it can't do is you cannot extrapolate like you can with other elections where you can take 1% and you can kind of see. So that makes it a little bit difficult. Okay, so here is just an example of one of the issues with this election. If you can see, Mark wins. Mark first, John second, Tom third, and that's 35%. Then the second one down, 34%, Tom, John, and Mark, and then 31%, John, Mark, and Tom. But if you look at all 3 columns and where John places in it, John is second, first. And if you look at where Mark is, he's actually first, third, and second. So that's interesting because if you combined the bottom 2 rows, you would have 65% who don't actually support your winner. So let me show you how Mark wins in this scenario, even though John's preferred by 65%. So if you only have 4% from those 2 second columns, you will have a different winner, and then John wins. So that's kind of the same as your order of operations that we showed at the beginning. So order of operations does matter. This is a real election from Maine. Take a look at Bruce versus Jared. Bruce at the beginning is at 46.3% and Jared at 45%. So you have 2 other candidates. This is just your first round. In the end, after your exhausted ballots, Bruce is going to lose and Jared's going to win with 49%. So we'll show some real live, and we have some live examples from Utah about this exact same thing. So this is interesting when we get into the exhausted ballots. On average, you'll have 11% of exhausted ballots. Some of this we found just through looking at other policy organizations is voter confusion. And I think this is where we can use the word disenfranchisement. We found the elderly and minorities tend to be just disenfranchised more than any other group with ranked choice voting.
That word again.
yeah, and today I've seen to support that actually, but
Okay.
that's.
Let's
and
swap data.
San Francisco specifically.
Yeah, we're going to talk about San Francisco right here. Okay, so in San Francisco, this was a crazy ranked choice voting with 20 different rounds. And so I cannot imagine how you would investigate 20 different candidates and figure out the difference between 17 and 19. I'm not sure what that meter would be. But in this, you had 53.95% of exhausted ballots. And you had over 9,000 exhausted ballots. So the winner got an overall 24%, and this is your false majority that happens at the very end. So this one was an absolutely crazy one, and occasionally,
Multi-seat.
yes,
Board of Education,
for the 20 round one.
correct?
Okay, so this is your non-monotonicity. This one is very interesting. So take a look at Don. He comes out of the gate with 40,000 right off the bat. That's an astronomical advantage, although he doesn't break the 51% threshold. So as you look through the 10 rounds that this goes, you end up with Don losing to Gene Kwan right above him with just a small margin. But if you go down to the exhausted ballots by the end, you're at 13,667. This most comparable is probably Sandy with their over 4,000 exhausted ballots and their vote being decided by 21 votes. I promise you, if you called 4,000, if you called even a tiny percentage of them, they would have liked to have had a say in those last two.
And afterwards, of course.
That's a problem. A lot of this you don't know until after.
Well, but you also, I mean, you have the choice, anytime you cast a ballot, to vote for any election you choose, to not vote for any election you choose. You can vote for or ignore a constitutional amendment or a judge.
Sure.
And that's partially where I get a little bit with the exhausted ballots is
Sure, I think
with
it's,
mandating that everybody votes everywhere, then you've got a problem.
I think it speaks to voter engagement. And if we're talking about engaging, we're asking them to do essentially the work of a delegate for 2 months to investigate this number, this high number of candidates. It makes it a lot difficult without the primary. Okay, so let's take a look. This is your most recent race. If you look at the red, this is the elimination process, and you'll see that after the red is there, then they go down to 0 and they're reallocated. And so on these ones, we're looking at total number versus exhausted. So none of yours pass it. This one, I believe, comes really close, but this might have been what you had said on the challenger being, misrepresented. So in this, you can follow these straight across. Timothy is eliminated, and then Ed is eliminated, and then Miley with the last two going head to head with these votes. And then you can see that the exhausted is 513. I think you ended up with 526 winning by, so it still crosses the threshold of exhausted ballots. And also on this round one, you still had the highest percentage coming out of the gate. And we have emailed this to you guys so you can look at these. We think it's pretty interesting for cities to go through this process and then look at their data. Okay, so the winner has the 49.92% after exhausted ballots are taken away. So that's also, so that's not the 51%, but once the exhausted ballots are out, that's where you end up with the 49%. So this is your District 3. And so the elimination of Samuel right there, then his 34 are reallocated, and then the elimination of Bowman, and then to Rawlings, and then Mike Hansen. So your last two is right here, the 1,059 and the 1,122 with the exhausted ballots of 195. And so it would be an interesting thing to do a survey to find out why the exhausted ballots happened. And so that's a little
That's
difficult.
why I was asking, I'd like the legislature and the Salt Lake County clerk to look at that law a little more clearly.
Yeah.
You can get the data without identifying the book cast vote record.
Sure. And the reason that I take issue with their survey is because anecdotally, we would talk to people after, and when with Lehigh specifically, we knew a lot of people in Lehigh, and a lot of people thought that they had done it correctly. And then after we talked to them, they were like, oh, I didn't know that's how it went. So had they taken the survey, they would have answered in the affirmative that it was a positive experience, that they enjoyed voting. And I would argue that if you go through and look at those survey questions, I think the overall outcome is that people feel good when they vote. And so you're going to get a positive reaction to that. In District 4, you have the elimination of Leanne Walker with 5.81% being reallocated. And then you have between those two, you have 1,297 for Ernie and then 1,445 for Ellen, winning with 52.14% with a very small margin of exhausted ballots at just 1%. So that one at the end passed the majority threshold without the exhausted ballots, changing the difference in that. So here's Sandy's race. This is the data that you guys were talking about on this. They had 4,027 exhausted ballots. Now this is where, when you get down to, I think if I if I zoom in, you can see this right here, 8,620 and 8,599. So if you followed that, that's why they had such a long time releasing those results, because if you had been the 8,599 one, you would have hoped for some version of a recount or something like that, especially with such a massive amount of exhausted ballots. And to find the root of what that was and why that happened would be very interesting. That would be wonderful to know. I do have to say that if you had contacted those people, I'm sure they have a pretty strong opinion, but the difference is you don't know your ballot is exhausted. That's the problem. And we don't have access to contacting those people after to let them know that their ballot was exhausted. So,
Well, I mean, if you were a voter in Sandy, and you did not vote for one of those two, then you know that your ballot was exhausted.
there can actually be other reasons, and that's why they did the
There are,
cleanup
but they
bill.
tend to be very, very, very.
If
high.
you skipped one, that was a reason that it got exhausted this time.
But that happens in any election, on any voting system. You'll get exhausted ballots in any voting.
Sure, there's
But it's
always a
usually,
percentage.
Kristen, did
0.2 or
you, how many more
0.5.
slides do you have? We're getting a little.
Yeah, I'm
close
so
on time.
sorry.
No, you keep going. I know we've interrupted you, but.
And so here is Weaver County had their ballot from 2020 been a ranked choice voting. And this is one of the reasons, especially with the elderly, if you have people that English is their second language, that you get ballot exhaustion, is because it gets very confusing. And so if you were to look at something like this, a lot of people, and clearly exhaustion could just be exhaustion. Like, I'm sick of filling these out when you get this many that goes on here. Okay, so this is trying to see if just, yep, disenfranchised is on there. So you have spoiled or incorrect ballots in Santa Fe had 45%, Payson and Vineyard had 5%. And this is interesting. In Oakland, I read this study, 5.7%, but of those 5.7%, 7.4 were African-American or Latino communities, and 1.6 was predominantly white. And so I think if we're going to argue that the definition of disenfranchisement, this one probably fits that. When you're talking about different groups that don't end up with same outcomes given these opportunities based off of whatever obstacles are in this way.
But the converse to that
Mhm.
is when you're running multi-seat RCVs, minority and women candidates tend to do better. Where they wouldn't in single seats, because in the single seat, if you got the whole bunch, you might win with the 33 or the 34%. But by the time you take out the Fred and the Ellen from, where was it, Payson? Then well, it wouldn't have been Ellen in this case, we're talking, I mean, but it worked. A lot of the minority groups started to be representative because some of those big takers from the whichever predominant groups there were, those were already off the ballot by the time they got down. So that third and fourth and fifth seats tended to go more to minorities than to.
If you have stuff on that, send it to me. If you
It's
don't
been a
mind.
while, but I did that. That's what, because I was really concerned about doing this because I had a particular group that was, oh, we're all for this. And I'm like, am I missing something here
Yeah,
that's gonna come? Because, but when I went there, and that was the other reason, again, with single seats like we have, it's different than the multi.
I would love that if you could send that to me.
I'll look through my stuff and.
Also, Maine said that 26% stayed home because they had confusion over the ranking system. And I don't think any of us want voters that want to vote to stay home. I'm almost done. I'm just going to fly through some of these. I'm going to skip that. Jerry Brown was against it. And I'm going to show you where people have repealed it. And so ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting is not a new methodology. It's been around since the late 1800s. There have been a lot of places that have tried it, and there have been a lot of places that repealed it. And so what I would like to say, because this pilot program is an opt-in every year, is that we just want you guys to be open to continue to gathering information and to be open to saying, hey, let's take a look at this and let's have this debate. That's really all we're asking. We talked about primaries and are they worth the cost? The swing vote with third parties has been a really big sell for this, but it actually doesn't pan out. They really just lose their swaying power in the final. And that's what, if you look at any presidential election, you can sway one by the third party. They have that power, but if you rank them, they just first votes off the top. Second vote will be the Republican. If they're Libertarians, it'll be Democrats if they're green, and that way. So here is who is paying for the movement. And I just want to tell you, Fair Vote only has two objectives. They want ranked choice voting and they want a national popular vote. That's all they do. If you really start to look at it, ranked choice voting is the vehicle to install the national popular vote. Like I said before, it is the elimination of the electoral college. And so I do this so passionately because I think cities are getting used. And I don't think you guys have all the information. And so I want you to have all the information so that when you see this stuff, you can say, hey, is this still the right thing for our city? This is who funds them. You can see this is Open Society Institute. This is the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Hewlett Foundation, Democracy Fund. These are the people who are funding ranked choice voting right now. And this is how ranked choice voting came into the state of Utah. Nice versus honest. If you always want to say to somebody, please vote me as your second, then you'll never tell them exactly where you stand on an issue. So a lot of times, like this just happened in New York, they don't find out where somebody really stands on an issue till they're in office, and then they vote. And then this is the joint resolution that they tried to pass last legislative session. They were not able to get it passed. It's basically saying ranked choice voting is a big success and we should keep implementing it. They were not able to get that passed. They had 3 ranked choice voting bills. The one that they did get passed is a cleanup bill. We didn't fight that hard against it because we were like, fine, if there are some cities that are going to participate in this, we would still like it cleaned up. Although we hope that they don't. So once again, centralizes power. It's unfair in multi-seats. You can't audit it. It redefines a majority. There is disenfranchisement or ballot confusion. It neuters the third parties, and it is funded by global people who have an interest in eliminating the electoral college, and non-monotonicity can hurt your first choice candidates. So
Christie,
anyway.
thank you. That was very informative, and to be honest with you, I love a good discussion, and I search to hear both sides of a story, and I think we make better decisions when we open-mindedly listen to both sides of the story. So thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank
That
you.
was a very good presentation. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
and please reach out if you guys have any further questions, or if you have data that you'd like to share with us.
Is this a PDF, Paul, you've got?
Mhm. Yeah, we sent it earlier.
And we will, like I said, the council will look forward to a discussion here within the next
Right.
meeting or two
Well,
where
hope
we
you're
make
all-
that decision.
Completely sick of ranked choice voting. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Christie.
Appreciate your time.
So we're gonna move on to item 5, which is city council committee reports. We haven't done this yet this year. And our city council works very, very hard, and I think it's really important that people get the opportunity to hear from our council and what they do, and the many committees that they're on, and the things that they advocate for. So I'm actually excited for this. We are going to split this into 7-minute periods. Because we're on a tight schedule today, I am gonna ask that we really try to keep within 7 minutes. And we're gonna start with council member Doug Peterson.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
As far as the different councils, the different items that we're in charge of, part of mine, I'll start with mosquito abatement. And the wonderful thing that we get to see, and in fact, I'd like to get it in the news, the next newsletter about the mosquitoes. Does anybody here appreciate mosquitoes? I was just gonna say, the reason I say that is years ago, many years ago, I don't know if it's because climate or whatever, we never had mosquitoes down here in the valley. I do never, other than going to the UNS, I never remember that, but it's amazing what our group is able to do with education, with and we talked a little bit about the spraying and that you were worried about, the different techniques, the different diseases that are being spread, different things like that. And this committee is amazingly dedicated to try to go around and make sure every pond that we have, every little water feature we have, about every tire that can sit there and breed mosquitoes. It's amazing what we're able to learn through that committee and the work that we do there. And so I look forward to getting that in the newsletter. Parks, trails, and open space is huge in our city. We've been very involved with just recently Anzac Park, running into budget constraints there on some things. Some of our bids are coming back. Very difficult to see some of that, and we're weighing back and forth. How do we do this? What funds do we get? Can we use ARPA? Can we do this? Some of those committees, that's what we work heavily on with the parks, trails, and open space. Obviously trying to get The Bonneville Shoreline Trail is a big push to try to do that. We're trying to now, we've got funds. We can't get people to sell us property. And so we're working on that every month. We're trying to do that. We're trying to keep our parks clean and nice and be able to have committees, volunteer committees that can go around that to those parks and be able to keep them clean and safe and keep that communication open with the community. I've cited about Ferguson Park coming up in the most east part of our city. That's Ellen's, and I won't let you expound on it, but you could later. But some of those things, of course, District 1 having the majority of the parks in the city. I won't expound about District number 1. But we do have Crestwood working to keep that pool open was a community effort and a county effort. The situation with hiring lifeguards has been a big issue, trying to keep that park and that we call it the Sandlot Pool. It's not a big regional pool, but it is very vital to this area. And the park that goes along the Little Cottonwood Creek is amazing how that is being used. I'm so grateful for that, for all the parks that we have. Of course, throughout the city, every day of every week, I get calls from individuals within our city. Traffic is a big one. There's an issue down on La Cresta where people cut through, and I was down there and I put a little sign up there to try to help them, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I mentioned that to you, Tim, about how important that is. People cut through, they want to, and they're not going to the neighborhoods, they're cutting through and coming out over I don't know, the facility down there where the liquor store is. What do we call that? What's the strip mall there? Off of Fort Union Boulevard.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has a name. I know that we have a wonderful restaurant that we went down and reopened down there. But it is an issue, and it's wonderful though to get those phone calls from individuals with very real issues. I just talked to a gentleman that is very passionate and has worked extensively with fiber, what we're talking about, which is a big issue that we need to make sure we're going to make a decision. And I don't know what our timeline is on that, but he gave me a whole list of his vetting out these different possibilities, whether it's Google or Utopia or some of these others. And so it's wonderful to be engaged, not just in the committees that we're in charge of, but throughout our districts and even at the large, our whole city. So I know that we have a lot to do with Dover. We're trying to figure out some of the things, of course, up in the gravel pit. And so it's not just in our districts, it's all the way through. But I'm grateful to be part of the committees that I'm part of, and I'm grateful for the participation and all of the community service that is given, not just from us, but throughout the community. But I think that's my time. So
Great.
thanks.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you very much, Councilmember Peterson. So we'll have Councilmember Scott Bracken give us a report.
Kim pretty much keeps everybody up to speed on what's going on in CH2. Because he attends those meetings well on our council communications when we have it. But we've discussed the Anzac as well, but other things that go on there. They do some of the smaller plowing needs we have when the snow falls, like around City Hall or some of the sidewalks and things that the city's taken responsibility for. But it's good to cross over. A lot of public works capital type stuff happens in CH2. The youth council just did a service project on Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail this last week where they went and cleaned up garbage. They're getting ready to do we'll be involved in Butlerville Days. Our next meeting, Sean's gonna come and take over for me because I'll be gone. But that'll give him a chance to pick his brain. Let him. They only usually need a little prodding. Well, and you know that once you get them started, it goes really, really quick and easy. But really good kids. There were 32 applicants this year. So we've got a good group. They help with Easter, Butlerville Days, all the other service projects. You'll see them out and about. My other responsibility is on Whifford, making sure the garbage gets picked up. That is actually statutorily mandated. It's a job that can't not be done. We were just certified by the Lieutenant Governor's office as a local district. So the governance changed slightly. Operations pretty much stay the same. The significant difference there is there used to be 2 or 3 things where, because we were a special service district, we weren't allowed to do as a board ourselves. And those basically moved from the county council to us as the board now. One was changing boundaries. This came up most recently with Sandy. There were about 400 homes that have been annexed into Sandy, but we're still in the district for garbage collection. It was just easier to get them moved. And that was something we as a board couldn't handle.
Can I ask you a question with that real quick?
Yeah.
I had a resident ask why they need to write a check to these people quarterly rather than putting that on, including it within property taxes, and I didn't have a good answer for it. You've been asked that before, or have you talked about that?
Well, they can leave it to their property taxes. The problem is they get a late fee attached and it will be collected with their property taxes. So it is an option, but there are some late fees that go with that. The county does still allow uncollected funds to be certified, which is a huge boon to the district because, I mean, going out and trying to, there's 86,000 addresses in the district, and trying to collect, $100 or $200 a piece would be excruciatingly costly. But that is the way that it had been done when it was a county department, when the county gave us a lot more leeway in what we could. They determined that was doing it all completely that way was no longer possible. And so at that time we had to build a brand new billing system. That was in 2013. It was quite a shock. It also was about a $4 million cash flow adjustment, kind of took out of our reserves to kind of keep that going through it. I think it works better now the way that it is, but yeah, it was just a way, because of, with that much separation from the county, it was just not the way it used to be done. Although there are still, I think it's 12-15% or so that kind of just let it go to their property taxes, and then it gets collected in November and December. They are increasing their curbside glass pickup. I mean, currently you can have your regular garbage, your recycling, green waste, and glass pickup all curbside if you wish. Those are all available in Cottonwood Heights. We do have the glass container, the public works yard. And we tend to have pretty clean recycling in Cottonwood Heights, meaning there's not a lot of contamination that goes into our recycling stream. And so most of the highest percentage of what I think our clean rate's about 86% of what we put in actually gets out to recycling. When you put in liquid in something that's plastic, something that spills out amongst all the paper and cardboard, that can ruin a garbage can and or more that's in a truck. And so that goes as unclean and doesn't get recycled. It goes to the landfill. But Cottonwood Heights tends to run pretty high on clean garbage. And they collect, oh no, I think it was, Pam told us about the size of the city hall property and about 15 feet deep. And I think that was the collections in, that might be a week. Don't know how much garbage was thrown away in one of their 86,000 homes per day or per,
Yeah, awesome.
and I eat bonbons.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Bracken. Okay, Councilmember Sean Newell.
Okay, I think I want to start out first by just stating how just I can hardly find the words about our staff, our leadership, and the way that our city is run. Just the engagement, the expertise is phenomenal. You know, I work on a couple of different committees. We'll go to the budget committee, and I think we have a Jim and Scott and Tim to lead us out in that. You know, of course, both. Councilmember Bracken is also a Scott. But you know, there was two of you. There's two of you. But the work being done there to see where our city is fiscally is phenomenal. And to be a part of that is great. And I'm just hoping to continue to be able to contribute in little ways I can in finding ways to help improve our cities within our budget to make sure that we're going to stay that way. And that, I think that's a real important, one of the most important parts of this way the city is operated. I also serve on the legislative committee, which is involved with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. That's been phenomenal to be able to meet and develop relationships with other council people here in our city, in our state, to engage with them, ask questions, and then learn about all the different issues and how legislatively they impact our city and how we can learn to better navigate some of those issues, but doing it in a way that's conducive to our city being able to stay Cottonwood Heights centric and be able to help us empower ourselves as a city. And then also being able to be a part of the overall state and making sure that we're understanding the impacts that we have and disparate impacts that we have on other municipalities within the state of Utah. I serve also on the emergency planning committee, and that one is fun. We've got some stuff that I'm going to try to do. I don't see Robbie there, but I think I'm going to go ahead and be a neighborhood watch person just to get that started in my neighborhood. We have that program, but it's not very well participated in. So I'm hoping that we can start to build that out and get people to really stay involved and to watch out for each other, because without that, and as part of the village, we really cannot keep moving forward. And we also, it would alleviate a lot of pressures that we have on our law enforcement to be able to have people out there watching out for each other and caring about each other, especially with the growth that we have. I serve also on the Arts Council. I'll tell you what, the people that volunteer for the Arts Council are passionate. They are something else. We had Councilmember Burrell attend one of our events and send a very nice email to those folks that really made them feel good about the work that they're doing. We've got a number of shows and activities coming up. As you know, out in the lobby, you see the art show and the photography contest, I should say. And I had a friend of mine who's a professional photographer come in and judge, and he said he was just amazed at even the amateur photography that is out there, how phenomenal it is. The Aspen Winds is the one that Councilwoman Burrell I got to attend. We've got a couple of big ones coming up. We've got the Willy Wonka play that'll be occurring. We've got the children's choir. And of course,
When is the children's choir again?
that is June 22nd.
June
June 22nd.
Will that be here in the city hall?
Yes, I believe so. And then I believe they'll be performing at Butlerville Days too, if I'm correct. Yeah, so there's 20 some odd kids that are part of it right now. And I hear that they're doing a great job and it's phenomenal. And hopefully it'll keep growing. One of the things that we've run into in Arts Council is just not being able to really push advertising out. So we're trying to find a volunteer that can really be savvy and pushing things out on some social media so that we can get more participation. But overall, I mean, things are working out great. And we've also got a proposal for a possible what they call a peanut butter jam. And that's when they bring in the professional dancers and amateur dancers to have these dance offs. And one of our committee members has done this in a number of different places, and it's been very successful.
That sounds
So, and the interest fee is a can of peanut butter, or jar of peanut butter.
Because the word peanut butter get involved.
And it goes, well, it goes all with some food bank. So it's a nice way to have an event and then do that. So for me, we've got a couple other things that we're doing in the Arts Council, but I just appreciate our staff. I appreciate the opportunity to serve. And it's been just a wonderful learning experience for me.
Thank you. That is great. Well, next we have council member Ellen Burrell.
Right. Well, first and foremost, I need to start by saying that I was elected to work to remedy the growing challenge for Cottonwood Heights, which is drive-through traffic and UDOT's insistence on turning what could be a beautiful and safe Wasatch Boulevard into another high-speed arterial. The fast-moving drive-through traffic is largely due to Cottonwood Heights' wonderful proximity to I-215 and Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. Growing volume of fast-moving traffic on our arterials and collectors will only worsen if we don't take decisive action now. Heightened by impaired and distracted drivers, we cannot enforce our way out of this. And that is why we need systematic safety approach to the design of our streets that accepts the premise that motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists will make mistakes. The only way to avoid high injury and fatalities within our city is with slower speeds where people live, walk, cycle, and drive within our bedroom and business communities. The place for speed is on I-215 and I-15. I've been working up an initiative that, like a three-legged stool, contains three key elements. And one is the need for alterations to our roads, which signal motorists to desire to drive more slowly. Secondly, connectivity and safe crosswalks and bike lanes that encourage walking, cycling, and transit. And of course, we have city staff that's working on this, and it gets some attention at the PTOS committee, as well as a regionalized first-class transit system for Salt Lake County. What I see is that starting immediately, we can prioritize neighborhood bypass for pedestrian and cycling routes, which would include easements, paths, and flashing light buffer crosswalks where neighborhood bypass routes intersect with our collectors and arterials. Along with wayfinding signs and Google mapping, I think it'll go a long way. And in the meantime, an ongoing project to obtain the kind of funding long-term to redesign portions of our key collectors and arterials, including Wasatch Boulevard, Highland Drive, Fort Union, Bengal, and Creek Roads, to make them safe and viable for all users. So what have we done already this year? I want to acknowledge the mayor and the council and staff. I believe we really all worked together to get a city resolution spelling it right out that we want to see UDOT apply a 35-mile-an-hour maximum speed limit design for Wasatch Boulevard. And also really want to acknowledge Matt Shipp and Adam Ginsberg for identifying an urban core designation for our code 14 for future road design with maximum at a 35-mile-an-hour speed design. So one of the things that I work on outside of the committee work that I do, and I'll get to that in just one moment, is work toward a first-class transit system for Salt Lake County, because this will directly affect Cottonwood Heights, especially again, since we know that so many of our Salt Lake County residents drive through Cottonwood Heights to get somewhere else. And so I believe we can do this with express bus service, which brings me to my work that I do with UTA. I want to thank the mayor for nominating me to the UTA Local Advisory Council. And in that capacity, I believe I can help to affect, better transit within our region. And we're already, many of us are in communication with Sandy, Holiday, and the other surrounding cities, as well as Salt Lake County, working toward that end. Regarding public engagement, like my colleagues here on the council, I've been working with residents in Apple Valley, Prospector, Dover Hills, Creek Road, and Giverny areas of District 4. And they expressed their challenges about unwanted real estate development, loss of community park to development, road paving issues, traffic calming, and other items, including a concern over UDOT's desire to choose either a gondola or a build out of Little Cottonwood Canyon, which they call enhanced busing. In both cases, that would mean a lot of traffic through the Cottonwood Heights community in the form of large trucks and cranes, and this would go on for years. So just everyone can know that we're all well aware of this, and it's not that I think any of us are anti-transportation by rope. Gondolas are a wonderful thing, but without sufficient transit system to get people there, the building of a huge parking garage within our residential area of District 4 is going to create just more traffic through our neighborhoods. The City of Cottonwood Heights has an incredible wealth of citizen expertise, and I really welcome the residents of my district, and I actually work with residents throughout Cottonwood Heights, understanding their perspectives and what they want to see for the city. And as we approach this fiscal year end this month, please be aware that the Planning Commission, Architectural, and Parks, Trails, and Open Space committees have additional openings. And so should you want to get more involved, I admonish everyone who has an interest to go on cottonwoodheights.utah.gov and fill out an application and get involved. I also, again, I'm going to wear my little UTA cap for a moment and say that if you're planning to go to the June 25th or 26th Sky Show at Hill Air Force Base, Front Runner will be operating at 15-minute intervals to the Clearfield station. Our nearest Front Runner station is Murray Central over by Intermountain Healthcare, hospitals, and Costco. So if you haven't ridden Front Runner before, now is a great opportunity, again, June 25th and 26th, to get up to the Sky Show. I also want to acknowledge something that was very meaningful to me this first 5 months of the year, and that was when Randy Whitehead put together an ombudsman training where he brought in someone from the Utah State Ombudsman for private property rights and land use. And between Attorney Marcy Jones' presentation, the mayor participated, I participated as well, and it was very instructive and enlightening as we come toward our general planning and the Hillside Plaza likely redevelopment. I serve on the Benefits and Compensation Committee, and like Councilman Newell mentioned, it's a real pleasure to work with Tim Tingey and Scott Jurgis, and related to benefits and compensation for the important city staff and our police force as well. I serve on the Cottonwood Heights Historical Committee, and each month these locals just amaze me on this committee. They've made amazing strides with electronic and physical archiving, a website, walking tours, and professional oral histories of our citizens. I also serve on the Association of Municipal Councils, and each month I interact, learn, and share with council members from cities around Salt Lake County on key issues that face each city, from housing to traffic, water, fiber lines, and related AI for cities. There's just been innumerable subjects that have been really helpful. And so, and I just also want to mention, my last thing is that I had the opportunity to get some real infrastructure training. I participated in the Cottonwood Heights Police Department Academy, also the United Fire Authority's Fire School, and the UTA Transit Academy. And so I think I'm starting to get it, and very thankful for all these opportunities.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Burrell. So before I get to my assignments, I wanted to actually take this opportunity to thank our council. We have an amazing group of people who are dedicated to being involved and understanding about what the ways that we affect our city, and we make important decisions. And I just want to say thank you for all that you do and for taking time. And we all know that this is not, we don't do this for a big paycheck. But thank you for all that you do. You're amazing people. So I do get the opportunity to serve on a few committees. I'm not going to be able to tell you about all of them, but I do have I did put down a list of them. That one of my cherished opportunities is to be a board member for the United Fire Authority. We get to spend a monthly board meeting where we make decisions, approve budgets. I wanted to give you an update on our two fire stations, station 110 and 116. One of the things that we're going to be doing in the future is we're actually naming these stations instead of 110 and 116, and then we're actually thinking of having our citizens get involved in that. I don't know, Riley, if you have more information on that. But the one thing that's happened to the 110 and 116 is they have gone through a seismic retrofit. If you think about some buildings that have a real need to be able to withstand, a possible earthquake, it's those two buildings. And so 110 was completed about a month ago. And I have in my notes from our last meeting that 116 was scheduled to be done yesterday. So I don't know if that's the case, Riley, if you have any more information.
Just gonna look, but I think you're right. Those are pretty dang close.
So they're done. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've gone through their retrofit and are seismic updated. So that's a great thing. I also serve on the finance committee within United Fire. And so I actually had the opportunity to really participate in that process. And it was interesting because, if you think about United Fire, what an amazing group of people. There's amazing sworn employees. There's a big civilian force that plays an important part in United Fire Authority functioning how they need to keep us safe and to respond to emergencies and be prepared in time of emergency. But that finance committee has been a great experience, and to see where the dollars are spent. Like our city, like everything else, they've had a lot of inflationary pressures, just the COLA by itself, but literally everything that they do. And so, I felt like I was able to be a voice, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about, where that stands in our budget update. So it's a really, really positive, great opportunity, especially to have an assistant fire chief, Riley Pilgrim, as our liaison, who we appreciate and love seeing every couple of weeks. A second assignment is the Central Wasatch Commission. We call it the CWC. I was actually at CWC meetings yesterday. I thought I'd give you, just so you know, I don't know how many of our citizens know, and there's a couple online, maybe some will watch, but the Central Wasatch Commission is a governmental entity that the Mountain Accord Charter was called to create. It's the Central Wasatch Commission, the CWC, was tasked with carrying out projects initiated during the Mountain Accord process, including federal legislation, the Central Wasatch National Conservation and Recreation Area Act, the Environmental Dashboard, the Visitor Use Study, and Canyon Transportation Improvements. In 2017, Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, Cottonwood Heights, and Sandy signed an interlocal agreement creating the Central Wasatch Commission. Since its formation, the CWC has grown to add with nine jurisdiction commission, including the town of Alta, town of Brighton, Mill Creek, Cottonwood Heights, Park City, Salt Lake County, Sandy City, Summit County, and the UTA as an ex officio member. The area focuses between I-80 and the Salt Lake County line south of Little Cottonwood Canyon. The one thing I'll mention is we actually had a press conference yesterday to introduce an environmental dashboard. And I am actually going to ask Tim, through our communications director, to put that out on social media and to encourage our residents to visit this dashboard. It is absolutely amazing to be able to go and find out what trees and what soil vegetation and soil exists in our canyons. It has items that talk about our watershed, the animals that exist. We are going to, I am going to actually try and get in front of the Canyon School District to get our teachers and our students involved in accessing the dashboard to understand what a great, amazing tool it is for our citizens. Another committee that I serve on is within the CWC is the Subcommittee for Transportation. Mayor Knoop is from Brighton is the chair. I'm actually the vice chair for that committee. We have actually started meeting to, most of the attention in transportation has gone to the Little Cottonwood Canyon. And Mayor Canute, to his credit, has wanted to get, even though most of the attention is going to LCC, that we start crafting solutions for the Big Cottonwood Canyon, instead of having somebody come to us at a later point and tell us, hey, we want to do this. We want to get out in front of it. And as a committee, I sit on that with the general manager of Solitude and Brighton, other cities and towns. One of the things that we are going to do is a traffic study. And so that traffic study, according to UDOT, is the first thing that we needed to do so that we could look for funding and for other things to help. And Cottonwood Heights actually committed to participate in that funding in that traffic study, which is Tim will talk about a little bit later today. Anyway, so that's the CWC. I serve on the Conference of Mayors these days, so we apologize if we don't let you know in advance what it is. The Conference of Mayors is COM. One of the things that COM is doing due to legislation in this last legislative session is to choose homeless resource centers, which will serve as overflow shelters for during the winter period of October 1 to April 1. There's a subcommittee on that, and every city was actually required by COM to submit a location, and we did the same. And we'll have some more updates as that process continues to go through the vetting process. Another committee I serve on is COG, the Council of Government. The Council of Government, hand in hand with the Wasatch Front Regional Council, meets monthly or bi-monthly and has subcommittees to which I serve on as well. One of the committees that I serve on is the Corridor Preservation Committee. And it's actually a kind of a cool committee. They look at cities have the opportunity to purchase property to preserve it for future transportation projects. We get the opportunity to direct some funding to those cities to participate in those funding. One of the things that Cottonwood Heights was able to actually participate in was the funding for the roundabout. Some of that funding came through the Corridor Preservation Fund, and I sit on that committee and help decide where those funds go. Another subcommittee is the Public Works Committee. As I decided, and I'm on my last one, I promise we're almost done. The last committee I decided to talk about is the Utah Foundation. I serve as a trustee. One of the foundation principles of this committee is called the Ladder of Success and the social mobility of citizens within Utah. They focus on the post-secondary education attainment for our citizens, home ownership levels, the extent to which people are earning more than their parents did, and the proportion of engaged youth. It looks at Utah's performance on these measures over time, and it compares the Beehive State to 7 other mountain states and also to the nation at large. Utah is in the top 3rd in every category in the United States and the top 2 within the 7 mountain states to which they're compared for all of those four committees. And having said that, I have put everyone to sleep.
Just trying to keep up with your acronym.
It's actually a privilege and an honor for us, I think, as a council to serve on committees that actually we feel make a difference within our state, within our city, and to try to help people. So having said that, we will move on to our staff reports. The first item that we're going to talk about is the Big Cottonwood Marathon discussion with Police Chief Russo. I do not see him. Oh, we do have our.
And he had to step out for some
Okay.
business.
So I'll have you go, and then we have our culture manager and Etzel with her as well.
So we have the Big Cottonwood Marathon. We have participated in that as it comes through our city each year for a number of years. The group comes and presents to you, and it's a huge event that creates actually a lot of challenges for us. And so we are moving forward and we're going to be participating in the event this year. But what we wanted to do is have a conversation with you on whether you want to continue this. And Ann can share some of the issues. Chief Russo can as well. We get a lot of complaints when the event occurs. And really the cost benefit analysis is one of the big issues we have to evaluate. There really isn't, they do cover our costs, but beyond that, we extend a lot of time with Shane having to put together agreements for the school district on the bus rental and a variety of other things. And Ann, I'll turn it to you and let you give some insight, and Shane can as well.
Reason why we're talking about it at this time is that the marathon right after September's event will put in an application or tell us to save the date for the following year. And they will announce it at their event. Hey, come back next year. So we wanted to get ahead of this, discuss it with you so that you're aware and then make a final decision. This was brought to the council back in 2012 to have the event. The way it was presented to the council at the time was this is a great way to bring in tourism, to put the Cottonwood Heights on the map for having a Boston qualifier in Cottonwood Heights. That you know, this is a private company coming to the city to have this done. It's been here for 10 years. And we're still receiving complaints. I don't just receive complaints in September, which is where it piles up. But if anybody knows or knows of me in the city, they will come out and saying, you know, we really don't like it, from businesses to residents. It is hard to get through. And the people, not just the residents of Cottonwood Heights, it's the people coming through using Wasatch coming across that have no idea what's going on, because we don't notify the entire state or county that this is happening. Part of the processing permit, looking at this, I'm just going to read through this, kind of brief through what we need to consider when you're doing a permit. The impact of a special event on traffic, security, and health of public safety. We have to look at that. This is definitely is one of those things. Probable interference to public access and use of public streets and other public properties. That is definitely public access. We're cutting that off. Appropriate reasonable requirements for mitigating of traffic, security, health, and safety concerns, and evaluations of the measures by the applicant, and if they can resolve that. Again, the officers have it, and the police department have done a great job in mitigating the traffic, but we still have the issue of something that dangerous could happen with those runners in the center lane. Location and duration of special events and the city's ability to accommodate that. Other previous approved special events that could conflict, could have a conflict. So just those few things on here meets all criteria. Is, do we allow this to happen? Do we continue to allow this to happen? Another part is, do we have enough staff to work it? And Chief Russo could state that he has to go outside of Cottonwood Heights in order to bring in enough police officers to work it. So those are some of the factors when you're looking, do we approve it? Do we not? It meets some of the criteria of not approving an event like this, but they really came in hard and strong to the council back then, stating it will put you on the map. It will bring money to your city. It will be a great thing for you. I see it personally, and going through these over the years, I see it not bringing money. I see it hurting the businesses along Fort Union, because some of them pretty much just have to close up for the day. I'll let Chief talk about.
I'm glad I came back in time. I'm sorry. I apologize. We had some other legal things we were working through, but glad to be part of this discussion. First of all, the organizers will have you believe that this is a great thing for the city and it's making lots of money, and they throw around some numbers, and I'm not sure where that comes from. This is not a destination event. This is not like going to St. George and staying in their hotels, in their restaurants, and buying the gas. And so it doesn't, economically, it doesn't benefit our city. You know, we've watched it over the years, and, you know, first of all, we didn't even have a hotel for people to stay in. They come locally. There's a few that come from out of area. But once they finish the race, they get in their cars and they drive away. Now, to back up what she said, I'll echo what she talked about on the logistics in working through this. We don't have enough officers to handle it. I have to force officers and make them actually work the day. Then we bring them in for Murray and Sandy and have to pay them to work it. And what impact does that have on the city? I will grant them, it is nice to have a big event like that in the city and be part of it, but other places didn't feel the same way, which is why they came to us. And here's why. It's not just police, fire back then, and I'm sure Riley can speak to that now, has to make special, they have to staff and put engines and think different places because they can't cut through. They can't get to the medical calls or fire calls as easily as they normally would. That area is blocked. Now we've gotten better at opening up the Wasatch and different places much quicker. We're very good at that. But every year people are upset because the systems come out. I got to get my mom to a doctor. You got to go around and back down that way. It's their kid's soccer game because it's always on like a Saturday morning and stuff, and they can't get through. They're frustrated. The organizers have gone to Big O, to Hillside, all those businesses along Hillside, along Wasatch, because we'll give you free advertising. They don't want their free advertising. They want the customers to be able to come in and do business of the day and leave. And they've just they want to be good. Those people are really good to the city. They don't want to complain. They just acquiesced and said, okay, we lose the business of the day. And so our citizens aren't benefiting from that either. That is, now I look at a certain window on these kind of things. So that is the window I look out of. And anyway, did I hit everything or there? And we do have,
Change
how many
you on-
DUIs have we caught? They're driving down the middle right every year. Yeah, at 10 o'clock in the morning, we get the DUIs right, and we're cutting them off, and we've had fights and, you know, all kinds of stuff going along that route where we've had to block people in with cars. We've crashed a couple cars, stopping people from running into runners. There's some liability, and the bus liability I don't like either, because you have to be specially trained to drive those buses up the canyon and so forth. And I think we impact the school district because we own that liability. And Shane can correct me if I misspeak, but you know, we get those buses and they load up the people. One year the school said, yeah, no, we gotta have specially trained drivers, and if something happens, we're gonna own it. We don't care what your policy says. And they wouldn't do it, and then they started doing it again. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
Shane, did you want to add anything?
Well, we have developed a series of documents over the years to try to make sure that the city's out-of-pocket costs at least are covered, to try to make sure that the city's protected from liability. We require the provider to pay for a special rider to our Utah local government's trust coverage to provide that liability coverage. My fees, I charge the race promoter for that, and the city gets a credit for that, and the check goes directly to the city. So we've done what we can to try to mitigate the out-of-pocket costs and liability issues.
Well, I think it's quite obvious the staff wants us to continue with this, no, I'm just teasing. So it's an interesting thing. We've got a couple of minutes to discuss,
May I
unfortunately.
make a
Yeah,
comment?
absolutely.
So I really am hearing all these comments, and I really can understand why it has become a real challenge to many departments and people and the residents. My first thought on this is that one day, if we're able to create more of the walkable space on Fort Union Boulevard and create a place where maybe the marathon ends, you know, someday, many years from now, whatever, where kind of like the St. George Marathon. And I'm here to say I ran the St. George Marathon one time. But, and of course, it has that destination component that I think, like the chief pointed out, we don't get as much financial benefit for our hotels and that because people can drive so easily to Cottonwood Heights. But I could see out into the future, one day having the finish line be somewhere where the finishers, as well as all the spectators, could be walking and bicycling and patronizing our restaurants and shops, someday. But that's not what we have right now. And I think that our city, it's no criticism of anyone. It's just the way it is. I can really get that it doesn't work well to do this. So again, I think it would be a neat thing someday out in the future. Maybe we can be thinking about that in our general plan, because what I like to always say about Cottonwood Heights is a destination. I mean, when you get here, you go, wow, I've arrived. Instead of only having it be when you get inside Little or Big Cottonwood Canyon. I'd love to see our city develop that people get here and they want to linger and they want to patronize our local businesses and they just want to hang out because, wow, the views, the cool mountain breezes that flow out of our canyons. But I don't think we're there yet. So I definitely hear that we may need to consider a change.
I think, I've thought about this a little bit, and there's a community engagement aspect that I understand. But I think if we've done this for 10 years, maybe it's somebody else's turn to maybe see if there's a different route to participate in. So that's where I would be leaning. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to agree. When we look at all the burdens that cities and having to carry from this, it's concerning. And I think that we have the opportunity now to mitigate that.
But if we, I know there's a dollar figure that we pay for this. I don't know if we could get a return on investment or a community feel, because doesn't it pretty much end in Midvale, pretty close to Midvale?
It ends.
Right on the board.
Yeah, 13 feet.
Yeah, right on the border.
Quarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, I wish there was more upside to Cottonwood Heights. I don't see it.
We hoped, and maybe they'll finish and they'll go to a restaurant and hang out. That doesn't happen. We watch
Yeah,
them. They go to their cars and then they go home.
Yeah.
And the only one that actually makes money is the Maverick store on 13th and 14th. Because people are waiting to serve. And it's fun. I'll grant it's fun to kind of watch them come through. It's cool. But they make a lot. In my opinion, we are subsidizing
Yeah,
them,
we are. We're
making
subsidizing.
a lot of money with our infrastructure and compromising our businesses and the risk to fire cutting through and the police and the citizen just trying to go about their day.
What do the businesses think of this along that? That's got to be difficult for them.
It is.
We get lots of complaints during the event, before the event, and after.
It's our main corridor. though.
Yeah.
And it cuts us off completely. And even though they put up those signs every year and they're big, people say, I didn't see one thing to tell me about this.
And there are 15, counting Cottonwood Heights, 15 Boston qualifiers in the state of Utah this year. So it's not like it's a major thing to say that. Maybe back in 2012 and 2013 when they were pushing it, maybe it was, but now there's 15 this year that I counted and found. Also, the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center.
They do contribute a portion to the foundation, the Recreation Foundation. I have talked to Ben, and it's nice to get that amount. It's not a huge amount. I think it's in around the 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4,000 or 5,000. But it also causes issues for their leagues on that day as well. So there's a give and take that's challenging for them as well. And
They felt there was more of a challenge worth the money to come in because people can't get to the parks where they have their leagues that day.
Yeah.
It's not a Butlerville days.
Councilmember Bracken, do you have anything to
It
add?
really isn't.
Has the city ever charged a fee to this?
Well, the fee, what we charge for a race like that is $200 and that's it.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
but they have to cover costs too.
But they
Yeah.
cover
Yeah,
all of their
that's just,
costs.
that's just break
The fee-
even.
Yeah.
That's not-
Yeah.
The application that I do is $200.
Mhm.
The police do charge a fee of the officer, so all those fees are taken care of and I can guarantee that there are hours that they have put in over the years that was never charged. You know, the time that thinking of planning, I guarantee that was never there.
And I'm just, I asked that because that may be a deterrent that you can put into giving them the opportunity to be here without having the city saying no. Saying, look, we have to, you know, apply this fee.
We would change the fee on all bases,
Yeah.
on all race, on all special events, so that would be a whole nother.
Yeah.
And we'd have to we can't just change
Yeah,
the
that's
fee.
true.
We have to
It's
do
a
study.
precedence for other.
We have to do a study to base it. We're not in to earn money on this thing.
And our study would cost us money.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, but so I think it looks like there's a consensus. We haven't heard obviously an important voice from Councilmember Bragg, but to probably not move forward. We could probably communicate that to them. I don't know if they still want to come in.
We'll start having the conversations. They'll be coming in at the end of their race but we'll start conveying this.
So it's happening this year,
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
but after that, it's a new.
So we would need to convey it now because they
Yes,
will.
because so they don't
announce it.
announce it.
Yeah,
at that
they will
race.
start announcing the next
Okay.
year.
Okay. Great. The next item will be just some adjustments to the proposed budget for 2022-2023. We'll have City Manager Tim Tingy talk to us about that.
Okay, so tonight we will have the public hearing on the budget and since the tentative budget was adopted in early May, there are a number of items that we are going to incorporate into the budget that we've received direction on. Let me just outline those real quickly, and we've talked about a lot of them. There are some additions, and then we need to get final input, hopefully in preparation for the 21st, which we have to make a decision on that budget, or we have to have the budget adopted by then. We talked about this last time, but the debt service for the Public Works building, originally it wasn't anticipated that we would need to have principal and interest covered in this year, but we will have to during this year. So we're incorporating that into the budget. We have the road and traffic study that the mayor talked about with CWC, a $15,000 increase. We talked about that last time. A reduction in the amount at VEC of $14,550 from the original proposal. And we spoke about that as well last time. We have talked with the Unified Fire Authority and they will be adopting their budget on the 21st. So it'll be official prior to that night that we consider our budget. But we're anticipating an $87,611 reduction based on their tentative budget and based on the reductions that they're looking at that time.
From where what was proposed.
From what was originally proposed.
Lot more of an increase.
Correct.
There's a net increase.
They're
Correct.
Still in the.
Yeah, definitely. This is
Just-
just a reduction from what is adopted in the tentative budget based on increases. Then also you had asked about topical surveys, Y2 analytics type surveys, scientific surveys. I was able to get an estimate on that for each survey. It's $5,700. So we could incorporate if you wanted to do 2 surveys, 12,000 amount, or if you wanted to do one, 5,700. That's what you'd asked us to get information on that and look at incorporating that. So I'll need some direction on if you want to continue to move forward with that, and really any of this information.
Would they be using, if I may ask, would they be using the quelling the same lists, using that?
The one that they used this time, yes.
Right.
Yes, yes. Yep,
Okay.
that's part of that. Then let me just cover a couple of last things and we can have the discussion. So liability insurance, we had a meeting Friday. There is going to be an increase in the liability insurance for this upcoming year of approximately 34,000. That deals with deductible issues and some of the lawsuits that we are involved with, as well as rising costs in liability insurance throughout the country. Also, the final property tax rate and associated new growth revenue, we should get that early next week, and we'll have that in preparation for the 21st. And then the final two things, we need to finalize the COLA amounts. Originally, we have proposed 7% in the cost of living. There was discussion about reducing that to 6% last time. We didn't finalize that consensus, so we need that direction. And then also we've evaluated and looked at the market related to mayor's salaries in the valley as well as council members' salaries. And we've looked at the costs of what it would be to bring those salaries into just above market. And so the proposal for that, as well as looking at increasing the vehicle allowance amount for the mayor and also incorporating that for the council as well. We have a proposal to look at that. The total cost for all of that would be around $40,000. And it's something that we'd like direction on. We would need to, as far as the compensation, hold a separate public hearing on that for the council and incorporate that. It's per ordinance that would have to occur. So if you want direction to move forward on that, we would include that in the budget proposal and then come to you and hold a public hearing on that and have you officially adopt an ordinance on those changes. So those are the items from the tentative budget that we need, that we're incorporating or need future or additional input on. Cost of living, the topical surveys specifically, and also what you want to do as far as council compensation. Those are the three things, unless you have any other changes in this that we need direction on.
We should do it probably at least two of the Y2K topical issues. I think that would be good.
You said how many?
At least two.
Two?
Yeah, I mean, we can see how those go. If we need to decide we need more, we can always make that budget adjustment, but.
Two besides the one we already have.
Well, the one we have is more general. These would, I see these more, one probably that deals specifically with general plan type questions that get a little more detailed rather than just you want. Maybe give some choices back. Would you prefer this or this? Do you like this type? You know, some back and forth so people have,
More direction.
yeah, you know. What would it take for this to happen? And, you know, it's easy to say I want new parks, but at the same time, if you contrast that to, I also want to raise my taxes to pay for the parks, you sometimes will get a different answer. And we can do some things like that. There are a lot of things with growth, density that we probably could find out with the targeted type survey.
So you're saying people don't like to pay more money for taxes?
I want to echo,
We have to balance it. I mean, it's the same thing we all do in our homes. We have to-
I
you say
know.
yes to this.
I
yeah.
mean facetious, but I'm saying that, yes, you can direct a question in a way to get a certain answer. That's what I'm saying.
When you have to be careful with that. Sean's an expert at making sure nothing's ever under.
Well, I really echo what council member Bracken has just expressed. He expressed what I would have expressed had I gotten to it first. Thank you. I'm right there.
He said it first, though.
I know, yeah, just like District 1, the number one.
Do we need to talk about all of these right now, Tim?
Well, the three, so topical surveys, and that's 12,000. If you want to do two, we can just incorporate that if that's the direction. Like some direction on the cost of living and on whether you want to proceed, which that will have to be addressed both in the budget and then through another ordinance with the council increasing compensation. So really, and if topical surveys, if there's not a problem with that, we'll incorporate that, but we need to talk cost of living adjustments because we incorporated 7%. We talked about reducing that 6%, but there was still discussion that needed to occur, I believe, from the last meeting.
And Merritt was also involved in that.
In the, what's that?
Well, we talked a little bit about.
And Merritt,
we went
yes.
six,
Yeah,
six,
Merritt.
and then Merritt would.
Correct.
6 is
So
just.
I think we were talking about a total number, right? Is that what, just to refresh?
Well, right now it's 7% cost of living, 2.5 average for the city of Merritt.
And some would be higher and lower, I understand. that,
Yeah.
but-
So we talked about dropping the last conversation we had is dropping the cost of living down to 6%, maintaining the merit. But then we talked about coming back and having one more conversation about it.
Which
So
would make it a 8.4. Well,
Average.
yeah, average throughout the city. Newer employees, we tend to merit that, boost them a little bit faster. And I think you also said that for those who have maxed out, while they don't get a merit increase, they do get a 1%
1% longevity.
longevity just bonus, so.
Minimum 7 for everybody.
Yeah.
So the council, any comments? I think we came to a little bit of a consensus, I guess, at 6, the previous meeting.
I
Do
know
we-
since the last meeting, Salt Lake City came out and said they were doing 4.5, and they were. That hit the news and that hit some stuff hit the fan, it looked like too. I mean, yeah, they're all over. Yeah.
Think
You
you
had expressed some parity with UFA. I don't know that is necessarily a driving force, but I can certainly understand that as a basis for that number. What's 1% on it? It's about 100,000.
Yeah, it's about 90 to 100,000, a drop in the cost of living, 1%. Between 90 and 100.
Mayor, Salt Lake City had a market study in March, so they're not gonna.
Okay.
They don't need to go much higher. Besides, I believe, Chief Russo for public safety was 7.5.
Yeah, I think that number is just for non-sworn. The sworn, I
They
think.
had or they're going to have
What?
market study
They had the market study in March.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
forward, yeah.
And their public safety is gonna be paid higher than that on their COLAs.
Yeah, they also say what another 128,000.
What's that?
There's another 128,000 increase for Salt Lake PD.
Did we
Well,
get,
sometimes the newspaper doesn't tell you everything.
Tim, did we get, I know that we had tentative budgets for other cities. Are we still there? Are we still stuck in that, not knowing what the general consensus is? I know it varies for cities, but I'm just talking a mean on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have, it's really stayed about the same and we don't have the final, of course. But there are some that are in the 7 range. There are some that are lower than that in the 3 and 4% range.
Do some not have merit, or how does that work?
Some of them have both that they're incorporating. I'm just talking about the COLA
That
there.
means some don't. have
Yeah,
both.
some don't have both.
That was
Some
my
do have
question.
both. So, yeah, that's still, there are some that, for example, Murray proposed the 7% plus the merit of ranging between 2.5 and 5. And there's others like Draper that's looking at, you see, I don't know if theirs got adjusted, but 5% and 3% merit. So those are some of the numbers we have. And then they're kind of all over the place, 6%. South Jordan, 2% merit. Anyway,
So South Jordan 6 and 2.
yeah, I think those are the latest numbers. We have, I have others too, but they range, like I say, somewhere between 4 and 7% on cost of living, and then merit is along there as well.
So I think I would put out there that I feel comfortable with the 6 for a COLA. And I think it, anyway,
Well, I don't think we've ever made this big of an adjustment.
no,
Smallest adjustment we made was 0, and that's when the cost of living actually went down. And we figured we're not gonna go take 0.5% from people. That just didn't make any sense, but. I took, with that and the merit average, that's still about 8.5. With things the way they are, we can always open it again if we feel, if we find out that we've messed up and that we're behind and it's not keeping our employees where they need to be. We can always reopen the discussion in September and adjust for January 1. I'm not opposed to doing that, is what I'm saying.
And I would just say that I still, we talked about this last time, I'd still recommend a market study in the fall, moving into next year to be prepared for
Well,
next
But you're
year's
doing
budget.
that, then we're kind of gonna open the discussion. Yeah, regardless, not because I'm okay with it.
And you know, that even this budget has some market adjustments. So that's something I think that we should always do.
Well, yeah, we had an unexpected big hit last year, but that was,
Remind me on the healthcare. Did we dropped that down a plan, right? I mean, wasn't that, or where are we at on that?
So there, with that, it's a 8% increase in costs, so
So
around
that's
6.
when we ended up on is 8%.
Correct. So that, and then there is some pass along to the employees as well with that. That is what is being
But we
proposed.
could have gone it to the 19% increase.
Yeah,
right?
19 was what was the high
Right,
end for sure. Yep.
so it's the general consensus on that move, is that accepted, I mean, is that,
I've shared it with all the employees in meetings in each of the departments, met with the police and all their shift changes. They're aware of that.
did we look at our use on that? I mean, is that something that is used heavily where that would affect them that much is my question.
As far as, well, certain aspects of it, there's some, for example, the total out of pocket. We don't have many that are reaching that amount, but there are some depending on the situation that happens.
That's variable, I know that. Yeah.
Now, my concern is retention and hiring. I think if we go below the 7%, that we will have an issue with that, especially with some of the costs of health insurance being passed on to the employees. I don't think it makes us that competitive. Our benefits are mid-road, our payment is mid-road. And so if we don't keep the 7%, we may fall behind, and we're gonna see it on our hiring and our retention. So those are my concerns.
Those
Thank
were
you.
the issues I brought up last time, that concern on retention, that you had conversations with staff and we're,
Yeah, I had conversations and said that it hasn't been decided, but there's the potential it could go to 6% on the
Mhm.
cost of living. Obviously, they'd love to see the 7%. That's
Yeah.
what was original, but I think that with the combination of the two, you're getting at inflationary rates with the CPI, and then even above that with some, especially the newer employees.
But if you're at 1% making a difference, there's more factors involved, I think.
What's that? With-
If there's only a 1%
Yeah.
difference, I would think that there would be other
Mhm.
factors involved to retention.
Yeah, somebody leaving for 1%.
Yeah.
Might not be the right employee.
Mhm.
So, Ellen, any thoughts?
I'd rather be a little conservative because, pay raises go out into perpetuity. As Councilman Bracken said, there's no going back another direction. If in this very volatile economic time that we're in, there should be, God forbid, but extreme changes. I'd rather revisit this in September. And if we need to make a correction at that time, do this more frequently as opposed to perhaps overcommit the city financially into something that is not sustainable. So I would lean toward the 6%.
Do we have, Doug, did you?
I concur. I think we revisit this, and check it. And see how that comes out.
Yeah,
if we're gonna do a market study, that should incorporate it.
agreed.
That's a budget adjustment.
The question is, you want the market study in preparation of doing potential adjustment in this budget year, mid-year, or do the market study and have that included in next year's, and that's something that we'll need to decide. We can have further conversation about that.
It's in there, that's kind of whether we do it in October or whether we do it in March. February.
Yeah, we'd probably initiate it one way or the other in the fall. So.
Yeah.
And then so I'm hearing that consensus of 6%.
I think so.
And then the final thing is moving forward with compensation adjustments for the council and mayor, recognizing we have to go through a public process for that. We can incorporate it in the budget and then come forward with an ordinance.
This would just be beginning the public process.
Yeah. Yeah.
To
What,
have
what
a
kind of
hearing.
percentage increase has been identified? Or what, how, what methodology has been used? You know, related to. the increase?
We've evaluated between 8 and 11 similar forms of government communities and looked at the market on those, and then we can put us a little bit above market in both the mayor and council as far as the percentage increases.
I did just a second, I remember we did a similar thing when we started. We set an amount, we did the council at X, we did the mayor at 1.5 times that, thinking that was gonna be reasonable. We did put a COLA adjustment in it, which has been going on. I think that's kept us pretty close to where we've needed to be. There is no merit. There is no merit being a city council person or mayor. So that part of any adjustments does not happen over time. And I believe the last time Tim said that we actually made any formal adjustment to that ordinance was 9 years ago. So it's been quite a while since we've actually, I think for clarity's sake, even doing the process at no change, at least brings up, even if there was zero change, we should still do it just for clarity's sake, because that at least brings, because the numbers with the COLA, it's like, well, what exactly is it? It's not as clear. I mean, that first ordinance said, you know, council's 12,000, mayor's 18,000, that's it. And that's as clear as you can possibly be. This would give us another
2013, I thought.
2005.
Well, that was the original.
That was the original,
And then
and we did a similar, we basically did, we just opened up, we said, okay, this is what it is. And we did another ordinance, and so I think it's probably one thing that we didn't know back in the day, and is things have changed, the council responsibilities have changed a little bit, the mayor is certainly a different animal than was, you know, I've certainly learned a lot more about the mayor, what it does, and I think that was not a fair amount of compensation. We've had some very good people who have been willing to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's reasonable. So I think we should do the process. I don't know that when you say that process, is that a public hearing on the 21st?
It's a public hearing and ordinance. We have to do a 7-day notice for the public hearing, hold a public hearing, and then adopt an ordinance with these changes. So we could potentially do it on the 21st. We notice it this week and
Okay,
give Shane
I didn't know how much. I mean, it is a sensitive and a very political thing, but at the same time, I think clarities. So a lot of people, for transparency's sake, it makes it just a lot easier if there's 9 years is a long time to go without
Yeah, I think
putting it out there.
I think some cities have not just gone with the cost of living adjustments on that. They have actually adjusted it, and that's why I think we're behind the market on that. So that's just what I think.
Yeah.
Okay, and now,
Well, I don't know, just for the public record of, for those that review this, you know, at least for the council members, it's based on 10 hours a week, which makes council members, some of the council members laugh. But so I think that for the public's understanding, it's helpful for them to see that this reevaluation is based on to do this a job in a meaningful way. You know, the kind of numbers that we're putting in weekly are, I'll just speak for myself, at least 2 to 3 times, you know, that 10 hours a week I'm experiencing. But so anyways, that's why, and I think especially for the mayor who sits on more councils and committees and various other obligations, I think that to retain and attract future mayors and council members who are perhaps not retirees, we need to do something that makes it an attractive option financially to perhaps somebody younger who's still in their earning potential and can't just give, you know, 30 hours a week
the goodness of their heart.
Well, so are we in a consensus to move forward the public process at least? That it sounds like. Okay, thanks. So what we are going to do at this point is, we have scheduled a public works project bid discussion with, Public Director Matt Ship. And I am going to push that. So we actually have a closed session issue as well. And so I am going to, entertain, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn our work session. And then we will start our, we'll go to our business meeting at 6:30. We have a really, really light agenda. It's, I imagine it'll be, we'll break another record, Mike. But unfortunately.
I'm happy to be here. Let me clarify.
And then, so what we will do is then we will close the business meeting and re-enter into actually the work session, finish with Matt, and then we will actually go into a closed session after that. So having said that word salad, I will entertain a motion to adjourn for now our business or our work session.
I'll move so that we adjourn our work session and get to the business meeting.
And I'll second
14
that
and a half
motion.
meeting. 14 and a
Is
half
that-
minutes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
That
opposed?
means food, I haven't
We are
eaten
opposed. Go eat.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I see Sean posting big pictures of pork belly.
Yeah, I